Cam Newton was heckled at his football camp, and the clip went viral. I'm Robin Lundberg here now with the fantasy exec Corey Parson and Ben Pickman. And guys, Cam obviously probably was a little irritated at first here. Then he had a talk with the kid involved after the fact. And I know there'll be a lot of takes about, kids these days and generations or parents and the like. I don't know this individual situation. I do know sometimes I think the way that the media talks about players and social media talks about players might lead to stuff like this. But Corey, how did you think that Cam handled the situation overall?
I thought it was interesting. The young man, J. Owens, down there at Cam 7-on-7 camp, bless the babies. Listen, he came out there, he trolled Cam a little bit, was talking trash to him. But notice Cam Newton immediately picked him out, went up to him, and listen, the kid said, listen, you might be rich now, but you're about to be a free agent, so you're going to be poor. Which, listen, is probably something that he shouldn't have said to Cam Newton. But the bottom line of the matter is the NFL media spent the last 3 months talking about how Cam Newton was washed up. So why, when this actual player said it to his face, does everybody have this big of a problem with it? I really didn't understand that. And then when you go back to it, when Cam actually comes back to re-engage the young fella, J. Owens, you know what I'm saying? The kid says to him, what I really liked was how the kid held his own. He was very confident. He released a statement saying, listen, my competitive nature as a football player got the best of me. But that's what football players do. They talk trash. They're competitive. He told Cam Newton, he said, listen, you've seen me on YouTube. The camera's always on me. I rep that 215.
Wait a second. You're comparing this kid and his YouTube videos to what Cam Newton has accomplished throughout his career? I mean, there is something called respect. And I'm with you about the way that the media has talked about it, and maybe that can bleed in a little bit. But there's nothing like admirable about talking trash to Cam Newton when you've done nothing at that age versus somebody who's a former NFL MVP.
He stood up to Cam Newton. Cam Newton came and and sneaked and looked for him. He stood up to Cam Newton. Listen to confidence and the swagger that young man showed. And then to see everybody on Twitter with these think pieces about how he's been parented and stuff like that. I'm like, come on. When the NFL media just spent the entire back half of the football season calling Cam Newton washed up. Robin, none of them would say it to his face. That young man did.
But there's nothing good about saying it to his face. Again, like that, and who knows how we should be talking, and that's a different conversation. But you shouldn't be talking to anybody like that. Now, as far as standing up to him, as you said, that's because Cam Newton came over there. There's nothing heroic or brave about heckling in that regard. Ben, what did you make of it?
I would, right. I think Cam Newton handled it very well considering the circumstance. And I think if you really want to learn more about Cam Newton, there's a great podcast that the Ringer's Tyler Tynes did documenting Cam and kind of really understanding who he is. And Cam handled this situation, I think, as well as you could. And you raised a really good point, Robin, that just because someone is heckling you on Twitter as a Twitter troll doesn't mean that, you're going to talk to that person that way in real life. And as a result, you probably shouldn't heckle them that way on social media. But it gets to kind of Cam as this polarizing figure throughout the NFL. We all know about his fashion sense and some of the choices he's made in that regard. And so people like to joke about that and kind of compare that to his play. And it all goes back to, he's one of the most controversial players in the league or most highly scrutinized because of what he's done previously in Carolina, winning a Super Bowl, being an MVP, being a leading black quarterback, right? That is an important part of Cam Newton and how people perceive him and how people judge him. And if you look at him, especially last year, going to New England, having high expectations, trying to carry out and continue the dynasty, but really struggling, right? If you look at him last year on the field, he started the year 2-1, then he got COVID, and then he really struggled, right? Throwing just 6 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions throughout the remainder of the year. He's one of the most interesting players to discuss in the NFL, right? And if you look at it right now, he's 32 years old, he's a free agent, and hopefully, he goes to a team with some weapons that will give him an opportunity to play, because I still think he can play, and I certainly think he's able and going to stand up for himself and continue to be a pretty solid quarterback in the NFL, or at least better than some other quarterbacks that are currently starting for teams across the league.
He said he thinks he's one of the 32 best, but I'm sure there's still a place on a roster for him. I don't want to talk about that kid or that kid's parents. I don't know. Obviously, he's still very young, but that isn't the way you should talk to anyone, and I think that should be an ultimate takeaway.